All right, let's talk about what might just be the biggest economic opportunity that no one is really talking about. It's happening right under our noses on main streets all across the country. We're talking about a $10 trillion wealth transfer, and it's a huge, hidden chance for a whole new generation of entrepreneurs.
So let's just start with a number, and it's a big one. 2.3 million. That is how many small businesses in the U.S. are owned by baby boomers who are getting ready to retire. Now think about that. These aren't just abstract businesses. They employ nearly 25 million people. I mean, that's almost 1 out of every 6 workers in America whose job is tied up in this massive transition.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting, and where the real opportunity is. A full 80%, you heard that right, 80% of these business owners have no documented exit plan. I mean, just let that sink in. For most of these folks, like 80% of their personal net worth is tied up in their business, and yet they have no clear way to sell it. This creates this giant gap in the market. And for someone who's prepared, well, that gap is a golden opportunity.
So the big question is, how do you actually grab this opportunity? Well, here's the game plan we're going to walk through. First, we'll look at the sheer scale of what's happening. Then, we'll dig into why these businesses are basically gold mines. After that, we get practical with the acquirer's playbook, how to find and fund a deal. Then, and this is crucial, we'll go beyond the balance sheet to understand the seller. And we'll wrap it all up with the key takeaway, stewardship. All right, Section 1, the scale of the opportunity. We're going to try to get our heads around this demographic tsunami.
And, this opportunity isn't the same everywhere. It's really concentrated in a few key areas. You've got manufacturing, for instance, where you find these solid businesses with real physical assets, things that have proven systems. Then there are professional services, like accounting firms, law firms, where you're buying into strong, recurring revenue streams. And you can't forget construction and the skilled trades. These are businesses with incredible local networks and really predictable income.
Okay, so that brings us to our next section. Why are these businesses gold? What is it about these Main Street companies that makes them so valuable? I mean, why not just start something new from scratch, right? Well, the answer's kind of fascinating when you look at the data.
Well, it's because you're not just buying an idea. You're buying a proven success story. We're talking about companies that have stable revenues, usually somewhere in that $1 to $10 million range, and they have incredibly strong cash flow. I mean, these businesses have weathered multiple recessions, so you know their model is tough. But here's the kicker. Many of them are running on old-school systems. That means there's just massive, untapped potential for a new owner to come in, modernize the tech, and unlock a whole new level of growth.
And get this, here's a statistic that might actually surprise you. The data shows that a founder who's 50 years old is 1.8 times more likely to have a huge success than a younger founder. So what does that really mean for you? It means when you buy a business from one of these experienced owners, you are literally statistically buying into a venture that has a higher chance of being a home run.
Okay, so let's say you're sold on the why. Now for the how. This next section is all about the practical playbook. How do you find these hidden gems? And maybe more importantly, how in the world do you pay for them?
First things first, forget about those online business for sale websites. The best deals, the real gems, they're found off-market. And that means it's all about relationships. You've got to start networking with the people who know these owners best. Their accountants, their attorneys. You need to be joining industry groups, showing up at trade shows, becoming a familiar face. And you have to be a local presence, getting involved in your community and building that trust, person by person.
Okay, now let's talk about the money. How does a regular person even think about buying $1 million business? Well, the answer for most people is a program from the Small Business Administration called the SBA 7A loan. It's basically a government-backed loan that's designed specifically for this, to make these kinds of acquisitions possible for people like you and me.
And here's how that deal structure makes this so accessible. In a typical deal, that SBA loan can cover up to 80% of the purchase price. Then the retiring owner will often finance another 10% themselves. That's called seller financing, and it's a great sign because it shows they still have skin in the game. So what does that leave for you, the buyer? Maybe only 10% cash down. All of a sudden, buying a really profitable business starts to feel a lot more doable, doesn't it?
But here's the thing. The financing, that's only half the story. If you really want to win the best deals, you have to ask a totally different question. It's not just about the numbers. So, What does the seller really care about?
And that question brings us to what I think is the secret weapon in all of this: understanding the psychology of the seller. This is where we look past the balance sheet, beyond the numbers, and really get into the human side of the deal. This quote right here, it just nails it. For a retiring owner, the question isn't just what is my business worth, it's who am I without my business? Think about that. If you spent 30, 40 years building something from the ground up, selling it isn't just a transaction. It's an identity crisis. The business is their life's work. It's who they are.
And that's exactly why the winning bid isn't always the highest one. Nope, it's the offer that speaks to these deeper concerns. The seller is worried. They're asking, will my life's work be respected? Will my team, my people, be taken care of? Will the business I built continue to be an important part of this community? A buyer who can genuinely answer yes to those questions, well, that buyer has a massive advantage.
So this all leads us to our final, and honestly, our most important idea. Once you understand the seller psychology, you can reframe your whole approach to this great wealth transfer. You're not just a buyer anymore. You're playing a much bigger role.
And that bigger role is being a steward. Stewardship is about taking care of something. It means you position yourself not just as a new owner, but as the guardian of a legacy. You're the person being entrusted with the owner's life's work with their employees, with their customers. And believe me, this isn't some kind of sales pitch. It's the core mindset that separates the truly successful acquirers from everybody else.
So let's end with this. This whole thing, it isn't some abstract economic theory happening in a textbook. The transfer of these 2.3 million businesses is reshaping towns and communities all across the country right now. This is a chance to not just build your own wealth, but to actually preserve local jobs and carry a legacy forward. So the real question is, what role are you going to play in it?